Writing test automation for API integration tests may take a lot of time. So let's take a look today at generative AI provided by Postman and see how it will help us to speed up the process. Here we are on my website, which is Instaverse. It has a front end and back end. So we're gonna test that. Let's take a look at Postman Inspector and capture some traffic. But before we do that, we will need to set up our filter, which is pointing to backend, localhost 5001. And we're gonna start capturing traffic. I'm gonna enter my email, which is slav@gmail.com, and then my super complicated password I can't tell you. And we're good. Let's stop it. So you can see the traffic is there. Open it in Postman. We're only gonna use post and get requests. I'm gonna skip those options. So save it, and we're gonna save it to my collection, and gonna check all the boxes. Now we can see that we have a folder generated and all the endpoints there. Let's rename the folder to login. We also gonna need to rename our endpoints, but before we do that, we will store our localhost 5001 to environment variable, and we're gonna call it base URL. Let's edit base URL as a name and then paste that localhost 5001, save it. So now we can find all the instances of localhost 5001 and replace it. So here we are using that replace tool that Postman providing, finding all the collections that contain this localhost 5001. We're only gonna change the request URL for now and go all the way down, replace it with base URL. Cool. Now we also need to do the same trick for our names, but we're gonna add a little slash there, and instead of base URL we're gonna use the slash. Cool. Now we change the names, saved everything. It's time for magic. We send our request, then we're gonna use a post bot to generate the test for us. Let's open the bot, and we generated all the tests, and we run the request again. We see that the 5 tests pass, so it generated 5 tests for us. Great. Now we need to extract this token so we can use later on in other requests. So again, we're gonna use the post bot. We can see that it got stored. End of the scripts. If we look at our environment variables, it should be there right now. And indeed, last thing left is verify that it's stored in a global variable. We go to our global setup, and we can see that there's barrier token, and we're passing that token variable. Now we're moving on to the next step, which is we're gonna create a story here. But before we do that, we will need to start capturing traffic again. Let's wait for inspector to connect. Start capture, and let's call it summer flower, and then let's add some tags. Summer flower. Cool. Select category, select all the necessary things, and share. Cool. We see the post here, and we could probably use delete as well here, so let's delete it. Delete. Everything is saved here. Let's stop capturing. Now we can organize everything by endpoints. So our post endpoint and delete is selected. Let's save it to collection, and we're gonna check all the boxes. Save it. All right, let's add a folder for our delete function. We need to expand the menu, add a folder. Here we are. We're gonna rename it to delete post. Cool. Now we can move that endpoint folder. We can also rename this folder to create post. Now we should be organized. Let's go to our find and replace, and we're going to replace the request names. Again, we're going to use the base URL. Here we are. We also gonna change the names, so let's select that, replace it with slash. Cool. Now let's run our endpoints and see if it's worked, and it does. We can see that there's an ID, so every new post have a different ID. We will need to save it so we can then delete it. So let's abstract it. Running postbot. Okay, we can see that the post ID getting stored in environment variables. Now we can reuse it. And there we go, we can see that we're getting 200 when we delete the post. Now let's add some tests. Okay, this is for our post request. And then we're gonna do the same for our delete request using the postbot. Generated 5 tests now. Okay, cool. Let's use a test runner and see how it's all fit together. So we're gonna run this collection, gonna select all the endpoints, then hit run. You can see that there's few tests that got executed and all is passing. So seems like everything is working. We just spent 5 minutes to add 11 tests. I hope you enjoyed this short tutorial on generative AI and API integration testing. If you liked it, please give it a like and subscribe.